This is another short story, and I'll leave it up to you to make up your mind whether you believe this is a coincidence or was this meant to happen. So it was my 40th birthday, so that's going back 20 years ago now. Leading up to my 40th birthday, I really wanted to do something special and for the people that I'd invited. So I invited 80 people to celebrate with me when I turned 40. We lived on a farm at the time and we had a really, really big shed out the back. And what I wanted to do was turn the shed into a restaurant, which we managed to do. So we had 10 large round tables to put 8 people around each table. They were done with white tablecloths and white chairs. I had flowers in the middle of the table and candles, and the whole of the shed was lit up with fairy lights. And we had a huge big industrial fridge which had all the drinks in it, and we had a bain marie, so we did pigs on a spit and lamb on a spit, and we catered for the whole thing. There was myself, my husband at the time, and two of my girlfriends helped me, so we did the whole lot. We had a cocktail, prawn cocktails, which was all in the fridge already made. We had everyone came up and helped themselves to the food, and I did actually buy the desserts from the cheesecake shop, I think it was at the time. So here we were out in the country inside this huge shed that was all decked out with candles and fairy lights. And leading up to the week before, I thought I really want to do something special for all my guests. So what I did was I sat down and like went into a meditated state, and I thought about each guest that was coming. So I gave each guest about 10 minutes of me focusing just on them. So I got a piece of paper and I focused on that person, and I wrote down whatever I could pick up for them, as in something that was coming up. With some of them, things that were coming up were like, I could see you buying a caravan and getting to travel very soon. With another one, I wrote something like, you're going to hear of someone in your family falling pregnant in the very near future. With somebody else, I got a bit deep with something that they were going on a very personal level, and wrote that down and how that would help them, how that was going to unfold for them. I saw with one of them that was some kind of altercation with the law, or there was going to be um, a need to go to court over something. And then there was another one, I could see them selling their property. So with each 80 different people, I sat down and focused on each particular one and wrote down a message for them. And what I did was I rolled them up in little scrolls, and they looked like that. So I just put a ribbon around them. Now, there was no name on them, there was no numbers on them. They all looked exactly the same. And so what I did was there was I'd made everyone had a place to sit. So there was a table of 8 and they all had a name tag. So they had to sit at that table. And their message of those 8 people was in here somewhere. It wasn't arranged where that person sitting just there was going to grab that one. It was just sitting in the middle of the table. So then I said to everyone, there's a little fortune message in the middle of the table for each of you. I want you to just look at them and feel which one you are drawn to, and then take it out and then read what's on there. So 80 people on all their tables took out their message, and they all, every single person in that room took the message that I had specifically written for them. Nobody got them mixed up. No one that was not buying a caravan took the wrong one. No one that didn't have a baby being born took the wrong one. Every single person, using their instinct, looked at their message, just looked at the papers pulled out the scroll and got the message that I had sat and written just for them. Now, is that a coincidence or was that meant to happen? Because 80 people, like, and then after, people were coming up to me going, like, quietly in private, how could you know that? Like, we've just talked about putting our house on the market. How would you know that? Or someone else said, we've been thinking about buying a caravan. How did you know that? I even had one older lady that was lived on a neighbouring farm who'd I'd invited. And she come up to me and she said, what is it you do? I kind of always knew you were into this kind of like, they call it the hooky spooky stuff. I knew you were into this hooky spooky stuff, but what actually do you do? I'm quite fascinated now because you told me stuff in there that you couldn't possibly know. I've never told anybody. So she was then very curious about what kind of work was it that I actually did, because she basically just knew me as a neighbour that lived on the farm down the road. So it was it was an absolutely wonderful night, and also just before uh, the party, I never mentioned this to anybody, and I kept it to myself. But I didn't want any photos taken. And I decided that particular night I wasn't going to take any photos. So back 20 years ago, we didn't really, we had mobile phones, but we didn't really use them to take a lot of photos like is done now. So we would have used cameras. And I remember taking lots of photos for my son's 18th and whatever. But I decided I did not want to take any photos of that night. I wanted that night to be in here. I wanted it to be so special that everyone remembered it in here, not from looking at a photo. And I never asked anybody, I never said to anybody no photos or anything like that. I just decided myself I would not take any photos. And nobody else took a photo. Not one, there is not one photo of that night. But years later, I've had people, I've saw them again and they've gone, oh, I remember that night. Remember your 40th? And they remember it in here. They don't There's no photos of to recall, and you can't look back through the photos and go, oh, you remember everyone that was there. And there's a few that are still would be following my page right now who were at that party that night, and they would remember it. They would remember it because it was in here and we never needed photos. So that couldn't be a coincidence that 80 people took out the message that I had written specifically for them. It had to be a meant to be. So that's another short story I just wanted to share with you, and I hope everyone has a lovely day.